You have been told that abundance comes from luck, from timing, from talent, from being chosen. That is the first lie. The truth is quieter, less glamorous, and far more powerful. Abundance is not something that appears when you feel inspired. It is something that accumulates when you act consistently, especially on days when nothing inside you wants to move. Most people are waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel confident, waiting for motivation to arrive like a spark that suddenly changes everything. But motivation is unreliable. It rises without warning and disappears just as quickly. If abundance depended on motivation, only the lucky would ever experience it. Yet when you look closely at people who live with calm confidence, financial stability, strong relationships, and inner peace, you notice something different. They are not more excited than you. They are not more emotional than you. They are not constantly motivated. They are disciplined. Think about how many times you have told yourself, "I'll start when I feel more prepared." How many goals have been postponed because the energy wasn't right, the mood wasn't there, or the moment didn't feel perfect? That waiting feels harmless, even responsible, but over time it quietly compounds into regret. There is a hidden cost to waiting for motivation. Every delay trains your mind to associate action with emotion. You begin to believe that progress requires a feeling. And when the feeling disappears, as it always does, progress stops. This is why so many people work hard yet feel stuck. They consume inspiration, quotes, videos, and advice, but nothing changes. They mistake emotional stimulation for transformation. They confuse movement in the mind with movement in life. Abundance does not respond to excitement. Abundance responds to structure. The secret law hidden in plain sight is this: life rewards what you repeat, not what you intend. Your results are not shaped by what you want most, but by what you do most often. Look at someone struggling financially. It is rarely one bad decision that caused it. It is small, repeated habits, avoided conversations, postponed planning, untracked spending, inconsistent effort. The same is true for health, relationships, confidence, and purpose. Now look at someone who seems to attract opportunities effortlessly. They show up when it is inconvenient. They follow through when no one is watching. They keep promises to themselves even when the emotional payoff is delayed. This audiobook is not about hype. It is not about positive thinking, manifestation shortcuts, or waiting for the universe to align. It is about the real mechanism that governs abundance, disciplined systems repeated over time. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not lacking potential. You have simply been taught to depend on motivation instead of structure. Over the next chapters, you will learn how abundance is built quietly, through habits that outlast emotion. You will understand why willpower fails, why comfort is seductive, and why small actions done daily reshape identity. You will learn how to design your environment so discipline becomes automatic, not exhausting. This is about reclaiming control, about building trust with yourself, about realizing that freedom is not the absence of rules, but the presence of the right ones. By the end of this audiobook, you will understand how people who live abundantly do not rely on motivation. They rely on systems. If this message already resonates, support the journey by subscribing to Prestige Audiobooks for daily full-length audiobooks that strengthen your mindset. Like, share, and comment so this message reaches others who are still waiting for motivation to save them. Now settle in. Listen closely. This is not entertainment. This is training. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Why motivation never created abundance. You have felt it before. That sudden surge of energy where everything feels possible. Your mind is clear, your goals feel exciting, and you promise yourself that this time will be different. This time you will stay consistent. This time you will not quit. And for a moment it feels true. But then life interrupts. Fatigue sets in. Doubt creeps back. The excitement fades and the plan quietly collapses. Days pass, sometimes weeks. Eventually you tell yourself the same familiar sentence: "I'll start again when I feel motivated." This cycle is so common that it feels normal. Yet it is the very pattern that keeps abundance out of reach. Motivation has been glorified as the starting point of success, but it has never been the source of lasting results. Motivation is emotional, and emotions, by nature, are unstable. They respond to sleep, stress, environment, praise, failure, and comparison. Building your future on motivation is like building a house on weather. The world constantly reinforces this illusion. You see success stories edited into dramatic highlights. You hear phrases like, "follow your passion" and "wait until it feels right." These ideas sound empowering, but they hide a dangerous assumption: that action should follow emotion. In reality, abundance is built the opposite way. Emotion follows action. Consider someone who wants financial freedom, but waits to feel confident before learning new skills or managing money. Or someone who wants better health, but waits to feel energized before exercising or eating well. Or someone who wants peace of mind, but waits to feel calm before setting boundaries or changing habits. Waiting feels safe. It feels intelligent. But it quietly trains the mind to avoid discomfort. And discomfort is the entrance fee to every form of growth. The brain is designed to seek pleasure and avoid effort. When motivation spikes, dopamine rises. You feel rewarded before the work is done. This creates a false sense of progress. You feel closer to your goal simply because you thought about it intensely. But once dopamine drops, the brain looks for the next emotional hit instead of sustained effort. This is why motivation burns hot and fast. It excites you, then abandons you. Abundance, however, requires patience. It requires repetition without applause. It requires actions that feel boring long before they feel rewarding. And motivation is terrible at supporting boring work. Think about the people who truly have stability and abundance in their lives. They do not ask themselves every day if they feel like showing up. They remove the question entirely. Their behavior is not negotiated with emotion. It is scheduled, structured, and expected. This is not because they are stronger than you. It is because they stopped believing the myth that feelings should lead. There is another subtle danger in relying on motivation. It creates self-doubt. Each time motivation fades and you stop, you unconsciously label yourself as inconsistent or undisciplined. Over time, this becomes part of your identity. You start saying, "I'm just not the type of person who sticks with things." But the truth is simpler and far kinder. You were never designed to run on motivation alone. No one is. Abundance is not created by intense effort once in a while. It is created by moderate effort applied relentlessly. The mind resists this because repetition lacks novelty. There is no emotional high in doing the same small thing every day. Yet that is exactly what rewires your identity. When you detach action from emotion, something powerful happens. You stop being controlled by internal weather. You become steady, predictable, reliable to yourself. This is the moment where abundance begins to respond. The secret is not pushing harder. It is removing choice. When action becomes non-negotiable, motivation becomes irrelevant. You act because that is who you are, not because you feel inspired. Most people misunderstand discipline. They see it as restriction, punishment, or force. But discipline is simply pre-deciding who you will be before your emotions vote against you. Every abundant life is built on invisible decisions made long before results appear. The myth of motivation keeps people chasing feelings instead of building systems. It teaches them to wait instead of prepare, to hope instead of structure. And hope without action is just delay dressed as optimism. If you want abundance, you must stop asking how to feel more motivated and start asking how to make action automatic. You must shift from emotional readiness to behavioral consistency. Motivation may get you excited about abundance, but discipline is what makes abundance inevitable. Motivation gets you started. Discipline keeps you moving. Chapter 2. The abundance engine you activate daily. Abundance does not arrive as a breakthrough moment. It arrives as a pattern, quiet, repetitive, and often unnoticed while it is forming. What most people call luck is usually the visible outcome of habits that were practiced long before results showed up. Every day, whether you are aware of it or not, you are feeding an engine. That engine is made of routines, and those routines are either compounding toward abundance or compounding toward stagnation. Habits are powerful because they remove emotion from the equation. Once a behavior becomes habitual, it no longer requires motivation, persuasion, or internal debate. It simply runs. This is why habits are the real currency of abundance. Your brain is designed to conserve energy. It looks for shortcuts, patterns, and repetitions it can automate. Deep inside the brain is a system that stores routines so they can be executed with minimal effort. This is not weakness. This is efficiency. And when you understand how to work with this system instead of against it, abundance stops feeling difficult. Think about actions you perform daily without resistance. Brushing your teeth, checking your phone, locking the door. You do not wait to feel motivated to do these things. You do them because they are wired in. They are part of your identity. Now imagine if behaviors that create abundance lived in the same mental category. Most people try to build abundance using intensity. They work hard for short periods, burn out, then stop. What they never do is give the brain enough repetition to automate the behavior. Without automation, every action feels heavy. Every step feels like effort. This is where people misunderstand discipline. Discipline is not forcing yourself to do hard things forever. Discipline is doing something consistently until it stops feeling hard. Habits replace emotional fuel with structural energy. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like doing this?" the brain asks, "Is this what we do?" That question is far easier to answer. Consider someone who writes every day at the same time. At first, it feels uncomfortable. There is resistance, doubt, distraction. But after enough repetitions, the mind begins to cooperate. The habit becomes a signal. When that time arrives, the brain shifts into writing mode automatically. The same applies to saving money, exercising, studying, building skills, or managing relationships. Repetition is not just practice, it is identity training. Each time you repeat a behavior, you are casting a vote for the type of person you are becoming. One action will not change your life, but repeated actions quietly rewrite your self-image, and your self-image dictates your behavior more than motivation ever could. This is why abundance often feels effortless once it is established. Not because the work disappeared, but because the resistance did. Many people quit just before this shift happens. They stop when the habit is still fragile, when the brain has not yet accepted it as normal. They mistake early resistance as a sign that something is wrong, instead of evidence that change is happening. There is another advantage to habit-based discipline. It protects you from emotional lows. On days when confidence is low, habits keep you moving. On days when stress is high, habits keep you anchored. On days when motivation is absent, habits quietly carry you forward. Abundance does not require perfect days. It requires uninterrupted patterns. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You sink to the level of your habits. And habits do not care how you feel. They only care how often you repeat them. This is where identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to build abundance and start seeing yourself as someone who lives by certain standards. Standards remove negotiation. Standards turn actions into expectations. Once discipline becomes habitual, it stops draining you. It starts supporting you. What once required effort becomes default behavior. This is the abundance engine hidden in plain sight. Not intensity, not motivation, but small actions repeated until they define you. Discipline is no longer effort anymore. It is identity. Chapter 3. When willpower betrays you. There will come a point when effort alone stops working. Not because you are weak, but because willpower was never meant to carry the weight of your life. Willpower is a limited resource. It drains with use, weakens under stress, and collapses when overloaded. Yet most people try to build abundance by leaning on it every single day. This is why progress feels inconsistent. One day you are focused, disciplined, and in control. The next day, the same tasks feel heavy, annoying, or impossible. Nothing external changed. What changed was your internal energy. Willpower fades faster than people admit. Every decision you make consumes it. What to wear, what to eat, how to respond, what to ignore. By the time you reach the habits that matter most, your mental fuel is already low. This is called decision fatigue, and it is silently destroying more potential than laziness ever could. People blame themselves for inconsistency when the real problem is structural. They expect their mind to fight itself all day long, to resist distraction, resist comfort, resist temptation, and resist fatigue. That is not discipline. That is exhaustion. Abundance does not come from fighting your mind. It comes from designing around it. When willpower dies, systems take over. Systems do not ask how you feel. They remove friction for the right actions and increase friction for the wrong ones. They make the desired behavior the easiest option available. Think about how many habits fail, not because of lack of desire, but because of poor design. You plan to wake up early, but your phone is beside your bed. You plan to eat well, but junk food is within arm's reach. You plan to focus, but notifications are always on. You are not failing. You are being out-designed. The mind follows the path of least resistance. This is not a flaw. It is efficiency. The problem arises when your environment is optimized for comfort instead of growth. Most people try to win an internal war when the real solution is environmental discipline. When you change what surrounds you, you change what you default to. Remove the decision, and you remove the drain. Consider someone who exercises at the same time every day, with clothes already prepared, music selected, and no alternative scheduled. There is no debate, no emotional negotiation. The system decides before willpower is even asked. This is why abundance favors structure. Structure protects energy. Structure preserves consistency. Structure outlives motivation. Emotional exhaustion is not a personal failure. It is a signal that you are relying too heavily on willpower, and willpower always loses in the long run. There is freedom in admitting this. You stop trying to be heroic. You stop demanding constant self-control. You begin building systems that carry you when energy is low. Abundance grows during average days, not heroic ones. The moment you stop expecting willpower to save you, everything shifts. You stop asking yourself to be stronger and start asking yourself to be smarter. You stop battling emotions and start guiding behavior. Design your environment so the right actions are automatic and the wrong ones are inconvenient. Let structure do the heavy lifting. Let systems protect your focus. Let routines preserve your energy. When willpower dies, discipline survives, if it is built correctly. Systems are stronger than moods. Chapter 4. Rituals that turn abundance into autopilot. There is a difference between doing something regularly and doing it ritualistically. Routine is mechanical. Ritual is intentional. Routine gets things done. Ritual shapes identity. And when abundance becomes ritual, it stops depending on how you feel. Most people live reactively. Their days are shaped by notifications, demands, and emotional fluctuations. They respond to life instead of commanding it. Rituals reverse this dynamic. They create fixed points of control in an otherwise chaotic world. A ritual is not just an action repeated. It is an action anchored to meaning. It tells your mind, "This is who I am, regardless of circumstances." When you turn disciplined actions into rituals, you remove them from the emotional bargaining table. They become non-negotiable, sacred, expected. Think about the beginning and ending of your day. These moments are powerful because they frame everything in between. Yet most people leave them unstructured. They wake up and immediately consume noise. They go to sleep mentally scattered. This creates a life led by reaction instead of direction. A simple morning ritual can change this completely. Not something dramatic, not something overwhelming, something consistent. It might be a few minutes of stillness before checking anything. A short review of priorities. A physical movement that signals alertness. The specifics do not matter as much as the consistency. The ritual becomes a signal to your nervous system that you are in control. Evening rituals work the same way. They create closure. They tell your mind that effort has an endpoint. Reflection replaces rumination. Order replaces chaos. Rituals survive feelings because they are not dependent on mood. They exist outside emotion. You do not perform them because you feel calm or focused. You perform them to become calm and focused. This is the hidden advantage. Rituals regulate your internal state through repetition. Over time, your body and mind begin to associate the ritual with stability. Stress lowers, resistance weakens, action becomes easier. Many people wait to feel ready before acting. Rituals flip the sequence. You act first, and readiness follows. Abundance responds to this predictability. When your actions are stable, your results stabilize. When your behavior is consistent, opportunities compound. There is also dignity in ritual. It creates self-respect. Each time you honor your ritual, you reinforce trust with yourself. And self-trust is the foundation of all abundance. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who follows through. The most powerful rituals are small enough to survive bad days. They do not rely on perfect conditions. They are designed to be completed even when energy is low. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. When rituals are too large, they break under pressure. When they are appropriately sized, they become unbreakable. Abundance is not built through grand gestures. It is built through daily signals that remind your mind who is in charge. You do not rise to your feelings. You fall to your rituals. Chapter 5. The comfort trap that drains abundance. Comfort feels kind. It feels protective. It feels like rest. But when comfort becomes a lifestyle instead of a recovery tool, it quietly erodes ambition and delays abundance. The human brain is biologically wired for safety. Long before modern life, comfort meant survival. Familiar patterns reduced risk. Ease conserved energy. That wiring still exists, even though the environment has changed. Now, comfort rarely protects you from danger. It protects you from growth. The mind seeks what is easy, familiar, and immediately soothing. This is why scrolling feels better than creating, why avoidance feels better than confrontation, why staying the same feels safer than changing. Comfort does not announce itself as a threat. It disguises itself as balance, as self-care, as waiting for the right time. And slowly, without drama, it shrinks your world. Abundance requires expansion, new skills, new standards, new levels of responsibility. Comfort resists all of these. Most people do not fail because they cannot work hard. They fail because they cannot tolerate discomfort long enough for growth to take root. They retreat the moment effort stops feeling good. There is a subtle psychological trade happening every day. Short-term comfort is exchanged for long-term possibility. And because the cost is invisible, it goes unnoticed until years have passed. Think about how often comfort decides your schedule, choosing rest when action is needed, choosing distraction when focus is required, choosing ease when challenge would lead to progress. This does not mean rest is wrong. Rest is necessary. But there is a difference between intentional recovery and unconscious avoidance. Comfort becomes dangerous when it is automatic, when it is chosen without awareness, when it replaces discipline instead of supporting it. Abundance lives on the edge of comfort, just beyond what feels easy, just outside what feels familiar. And the only way to reach it is through repeated exposure to mild discomfort. This discomfort does not need to be extreme. It only needs to be consistent. Small challenges faced daily train the mind to stop running from effort. Over time, what once felt uncomfortable becomes normal. This is how standards rise. This is how identity shifts. The comfort zone is not a place of rest. It is a place of stagnation. Nothing grows there because nothing is demanded there. Abundance demands more from you than comfort is willing to give. It asks for patience when rewards are delayed, discipline when emotions fluctuate, action when excuses feel convincing. The people who seem disciplined are not immune to comfort. They have simply trained themselves to recognize it and move anyway. Comfort is a cage disguised as care. Chapter 6. Small actions that attract big results. Abundance is not built through dramatic transformation. It is built through accumulation, quiet, almost invisible progress that compounds while most people are distracted by the desire for fast results. The mind is naturally drawn to big moves. Big changes feel meaningful. They create the illusion of control, but big moves are difficult to repeat, and anything that cannot be repeated cannot compound. This is why most people overestimate what they can do in a short time and underestimate what they can build over a long time. Small actions feel insignificant in the moment. Skipping them feels harmless. But repetition turns small actions into forces that reshape identity, confidence, and outcomes. Abundance responds to momentum, not magnitude. A single workout does not change a body. A single focus session does not build mastery. A single disciplined decision does not create stability. But each one contributes to a pattern. And patterns, once established, accelerate. This is where many people lose patience. They do the right things briefly, see little change, and assume it is not working. They forget that compounding is invisible before it becomes undeniable. Small wins matter because they build proof. Each completed action sends a signal to the mind that follow-through is possible. That signal builds confidence. Confidence fuels consistency. Consistency attracts opportunity. This is not motivation, this is momentum. Momentum is powerful because it reduces friction. Once you are in motion, staying in motion requires less effort than starting from zero. This is why the first small action is more important than the perfect plan. Habit stacking makes this process even stronger. When a new behavior is attached to an existing one, resistance drops. The brain accepts it more easily. One action becomes the trigger for the next. This is how disciplined people make progress look effortless. They are not doing more. They are doing things in sequence. Abundance grows when progress feels manageable, when actions are small enough to survive low-energy days, when discipline does not feel heroic, but normal. The problem is not that people lack ambition. The problem is that their actions are too large to sustain. Small disciplines practiced daily create giant identities over time. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying and start seeing yourself as someone who follows through. That identity change is what attracts bigger results. People trust you. Opportunities find you. Confidence stabilizes. Not because you forced it, but because you earned it quietly. Tiny disciplines create giant identities. Chapter 7. Training consistency and abundance trusts you. Consistency is not a personality trait. It is not something you are born with or without. It is a trainable skill. And like any skill, it is built through practice, not intention. Most people believe consistency means never missing a day, never breaking a streak, never losing momentum. This belief quietly sabotages them. The first disruption feels like failure. The second feels like proof that they are incapable. Eventually, they stop trying altogether. True consistency works differently. It is not about perfection. It is about recovery speed. Abundance does not require flawless execution. It requires reliable return, the ability to come back without drama, shame, or delay. This is where most people get stuck. They treat missed days as moral failures instead of logistical problems. Emotion floods in, self-criticism takes over, and instead of restarting, they retreat. Consistency collapses not because of mistakes, but because of how mistakes are interpreted. The mind needs safety to repeat behavior. When every slip is punished with shame, the mind avoids the process altogether. But when restarts are normalized, consistency strengthens. One of the most powerful tools for training consistency is the minimum daily standard. This is the smallest version of a habit that still counts. Small enough to complete on the worst days, small enough to remove excuses. The purpose of the minimum standard is not performance, it is continuity. On high-energy days, you can exceed it. On low-energy days, you protect it. The standard never changes, only the output does. This trains the brain to associate identity with showing up, not with outcomes. You are no longer someone who is consistent only when conditions are ideal. You are someone who shows up regardless. Over time, this creates emotional stability. You stop riding the highs and lows. You stop overreacting to temporary dips. Your nervous system learns that effort is safe. This is how discipline becomes calm instead of forceful. Neuroscience supports this. Repetition strengthens neural pathways. The more often a behavior is completed, the less energy it requires. What once felt like effort begins to feel automatic. But this only happens when repetition is uninterrupted long enough. Large habits fail because they break under pressure. Small habits survive because they adapt. Consistency is built when the cost of restarting is low, when missing a day does not feel catastrophic, when the door is always open. Another key shift is rewarding the process, not the result. Results are delayed, inconsistent, often outside your control. When you tie satisfaction to outcomes, motivation becomes unstable. Process rewards are immediate. They reinforce behavior directly. Completion itself becomes the reward. This does not mean ignoring results. It means not depending on them for momentum. When consistency is the goal, abundance becomes a byproduct. You begin to trust yourself. That trust changes how you think, plan, and decide. You stop overcommitting. You stop making promises you cannot keep. Your standards become realistic and therefore reliable. Abundance responds to reliability. Opportunities gravitate toward those who are steady, not sporadic. People trust those who follow through quietly, not those who make dramatic declarations. Consistency is not loud. It is not impressive in the moment. It is powerful over time. Every restart strengthens the skill. Every return reinforces identity. Every small completion builds proof. Consistency is built on forgiving restarts. Chapter 8. Using emotions without letting them lead. Emotions are not the enemy. They are information, signals about internal states, unmet needs, or external pressure. The problem begins when emotions are treated as commands instead of data. Most people do not fail because they feel too much. They fail because they obey what they feel without pausing to interpret it. A feeling of discomfort becomes a reason to stop. A feeling of fear becomes a reason to avoid. A feeling of boredom becomes a reason to quit. Over time, emotions begin to dictate behavior. Abundance requires a different relationship with emotion, one based on awareness, not obedience. There is a critical difference between feeling something and following it. Feeling is automatic. Following is a choice. Disciplined people feel resistance, doubt, and fatigue just like everyone else. The difference is that they do not treat those sensations as instructions. They observe them, label them, and decide anyway. This is emotional literacy, the ability to recognize internal states without being controlled by them. A simple practice changes everything. When an emotion arises, pause, name it: anxiety, frustration, boredom, fear. Then ask a single question. What does discipline require right now? This creates space between sensation and action. In that space, freedom exists. Emotions are temporary. They fluctuate based on sleep, nutrition, stress, and context. Behavior, when structured, can remain stable regardless. When emotions lead, life becomes reactive. When awareness leads, life becomes intentional. Consider failure. Most people experience a mistake and immediately assign meaning to it. They feel disappointment and conclude they are not capable. They feel embarrassment and conclude they should stop. A disciplined response looks different. The emotion is acknowledged without judgment. The event is analyzed. Adjustments are made. The process continues. This turns emotion into feedback instead of identity. The same applies to success. Excitement can be motivating, but it can also lead to overconfidence and burnout. Discipline tempers emotion in both directions. It keeps behavior steady, whether the emotional wave is high or low. This emotional neutrality is not numbness. It is stability. Abundance grows in stable conditions. When you stop obeying every feeling, you gain control over direction. You stop being pulled by mood. You stop reacting to internal weather. You still feel everything, but you choose what you act on. This is one of the most liberating shifts a person can make. You realize that emotions do not define you. They pass through you. Feel everything. Obey nothing. Chapter 9. Strengthening the mind that holds abundance. The mind, like the body, adapts to the demands placed upon it. When challenged gradually and consistently, it becomes stronger. When avoided and protected from stress, it becomes fragile. Most people train their bodies more than their minds, yet the mind carries every decision, every delay, every challenge that abundance requires. Mental strength is not about aggression or toughness. It is about capacity, the ability to stay present under pressure, to maintain focus during discomfort, to continue acting even when resistance appears. This capacity is built, not assumed. One of the most effective ways to train the mind is through controlled discomfort. Small, voluntary challenges that teach the nervous system that discomfort is survivable. That effort does not equal danger. Simple practices can do this. Short periods of focused attention without distraction. Physical challenges that are uncomfortable but safe. Moments of silence where the mind is not entertained. These are not punishments, they are training sessions. Each time you remain present during mild discomfort, you weaken the mind's impulse to escape. You teach yourself that you do not need immediate relief to be okay. This is crucial for abundance. Every long-term goal includes periods where rewards are delayed. If the mind is conditioned to demand immediate comfort, progress will always stall. Neuroplasticity supports this process. The brain changes in response to repeated experiences. When you repeatedly choose focus over distraction, resilience over avoidance, discipline over impulse, the brain adapts. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes familiar. What once triggered resistance becomes manageable. Mental training also includes reflection, not emotional rumination but structured review. Looking at actions objectively, identifying patterns, adjusting without self-attack. This creates learning instead of self-criticisms. Abundance does not require a perfect mind, it requires a trained one. When the mind is trained, discipline feels lighter. Focus lasts longer. Stress becomes informative instead of overwhelming. You stop fearing effort. You stop fearing boredom. You stop fearing delayed gratification. You trust your capacity to hold discomfort without breaking. Discipline is your mind, lifting itself. Chapter 10. The inner voice that decides everything. Your life is shaped less by external circumstances and more by the conversations you have with yourself when no one else is listening. That internal dialogue quietly decides what you attempt, what you avoid, and what you believe is possible. Most of these thoughts go unnoticed. They sound familiar, reasonable, and true. But many of them are stories, not facts. Statements like, "I'm not ready," "I can't do this right now," or "this isn't the right time" feel logical. They protect you from discomfort. They reduce anxiety. And in doing so, they quietly sabotage discipline. The mind is a persuasive narrator. It can justify almost any delay if left unchallenged. Abundance requires discipline of thought, not forcing positivity, but practicing accuracy. The first step is awareness. You begin noticing recurring mental phrases, patterns of hesitation, automatic excuses dressed up as logic. These thoughts are not enemies, they are habits, and like all habits, they can be retrained. When a limiting thought appears, do not argue emotionally with it. Emotion feeds it. Instead, respond with structure. Ask what action is required regardless of how you feel. Place vague narratives with concrete tasks. The mind struggles to resist specificity. "I'm overwhelmed" becomes, "I will work on this for 10 minutes." "I'm not good at this" becomes, "I will complete the next small step." "I don't feel like it" becomes irrelevant. Thought journaling strengthens this process. Writing down internal dialogue externalizes it. It creates distance. What once felt like truth becomes something you can examine. Over time, you begin to trust actions more than thoughts. You stop waiting for mental permission to move. This does not mean ignoring fear or doubt. It means not letting them schedule your behavior. Your thoughts influence your actions. Your actions reinforce your thoughts. Discipline interrupts this loop and rewrites it. When behavior leads, the mind follows. Your thoughts become your schedule. Chapter 11. How abundance rewards respect for time. Time does not respond to urgency. It responds to structure. When everything feels important, nothing is protected. When time is treated as an enemy, it slips away unnoticed. Most people live in reaction mode. They rush, multitask, and constantly feel behind. This creates the illusion of productivity while eroding consistency. Abundance requires a different relationship with time, one based on pacing, not speed. Speed is emotional. It spikes under pressure and collapses under fatigue. Pace is deliberate, sustainable, repeatable. People who build abundance think in seasons, not moments. They do not demand immediate results from processes designed to mature slowly. They understand that forcing progress often breaks momentum. Urgency creates inconsistency. It pushes you to overcommit, then burn out. Discipline creates boundaries. It defines what matters and protects it. Time blocking is not about filling every hour. It is about honoring priorities. Non-negotiable hours are reserved for actions that compound over time. Skill building, health, planning, reflection. These hours are not optional. They are appointments with your future. When time is structured, anxiety decreases. You stop carrying unfinished tasks in your mind. You know when effort begins and ends. This mental clarity supports discipline. Focus deepens. Distraction loses power. Abundance does not reward those who are always busy. It rewards those who are consistently invested. When you respect time, time works with you. Progress becomes visible. Results stabilize. Discipline is the art of time made visible. Chapter 12. Building spaces that make abundance inevitable. Your environment is always influencing you, even when you are not aware of it. The layout of your space, the people around you, the digital inputs you consume. They all shape your behavior quietly and consistently. Discipline becomes fragile when the environment works against it. Abundance becomes difficult when distraction is constant. Most people try to change themselves without changing their surroundings. This is why effort feels exhausting. The environment keeps pulling behavior back to default patterns. Abundance responds to design. When cues are clear and friction is reduced, the right actions happen more often. When distractions are visible and convenient, discipline erodes. Small changes matter. A workspace that signals focus. A phone that is less accessible during deep work. A living space that supports calm instead of chaos. Remove friction from good habits. Place tools within reach. Prepare in advance. Make starting easier than stopping. Add friction to habits that drain you. Increase the steps required. Reduce exposure. Make distraction inconvenient. People influence environment as well. Consistency is contagious. Standards rise when surrounded by those who live intentionally. This is not about control. It is about alignment. You cannot stay disciplined in a world built for distraction. You must shape your surroundings to protect your focus. Abundance grows where attention is respected. Chapter 13. Who you become when no one is looking. There is a version of you that exists only in private. No audience, no recognition, no immediate reward. That version determines everything. Public success is built on private discipline. What you do when there is no pressure, no praise, and no consequence reveals your true standards. Most people perform when watched. Deadlines, expectations, and external accountability temporarily elevate behavior. But abundance does not depend on supervision. It depends on self-respect. Private discipline is the ability to keep promises to yourself, even when breaking them would be easy and unnoticed. It is choosing alignment over convenience. This is where identity is forged. Every time you act with integrity in private, you strengthen trust with yourself. Every time you avoid what you know you should do, that trust weakens. Over time, this relationship becomes the foundation of confidence or the source of quiet doubt. Abundance grows in people who trust themselves. This trust does not come from motivation, it comes from evidence. Small moments where you chose discipline without applause. When no one is watching, excuses feel more convincing, comfort feels more justified, but this is also where growth accelerates fastest. Private discipline removes dependency on external validation. You stop needing approval to act. You stop negotiating with your standards. This creates inner stability. You know who you are regardless of circumstances. Abundance responds to this stability. Opportunities gravitate toward those who are consistent, even when it does not benefit them immediately. Your private habits predict your public power. Chapter 14. Turning setbacks into abundance training. Failure is inevitable. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling comfort, not truth. What separates those who build abundance from those who stay stuck is not the absence of failure, but their relationship with it. Most people experience failure as a verdict, a judgment on their ability, intelligence, or worth. Emotion takes over, and the mind rushes to protect the ego. Excuses appear, blame shifts, or worse, shame convinces them to stop trying altogether. This reaction turns a temporary setback into a permanent limitation. Failure is not a signal to quit. It is information, data, pointing to what needs adjustment. When approached with discipline, failure becomes one of the most efficient teachers available. The disciplined response to failure follows a simple pattern. First, acknowledge what happened without distortion. No minimizing, no exaggeration, just facts. Second, analyze the cause, not emotionally but structurally. What broke down? Was it preparation, environment, timing, energy, or expectation? Third, adjust the system. Make the smallest change that prevents the same failure from repeating. This process turns failure into training instead of trauma. Most people skip the analysis and jump straight to emotion. They feel discouraged and assume that feeling is meaningful. But feelings after failure are unreliable. They are loud, not accurate. Abundance grows when feedback is separated from identity. A disciplined person does not say, "I failed." They say, "This attempt failed." That distinction protects momentum. Setbacks often reveal unrealistic standards, goals that are too large, systems that are too fragile, expectations that ignore human limits. Failure exposes these weaknesses so they can be corrected. Avoiding failure avoids learning. There are countless stories of people who used early losses to refine direction. Businesses that collapsed but clarified priorities. Relationships that ended but revealed boundaries. Missed opportunities that redirected effort toward better alignment. The common thread is not resilience through emotion, but resilience through structure. When failure is expected, it loses its power. When recovery is planned, momentum is preserved. Abundance favors those who can fall without abandoning themselves. Failure is feedback wearing disguise. Chapter 15. Why energy decides what abundance you can hold. Time is fixed. Energy is not. Yet most people try to manage their lives as if energy were unlimited and time were the only constraint. This misunderstanding quietly sabotages discipline. You can schedule every hour perfectly and still fail to follow through if your energy is depleted. Discipline collapses when the body and mind are exhausted, regardless of intention. Abundance requires capacity, and capacity is built by managing energy, not squeezing time. Energy follows biological rhythms. There are natural peaks and dips throughout the day. When these cycles are ignored, effort feels heavier than it needs to be. When they are respected, consistency becomes easier. Sleep is not optional. It is foundational. Lack of rest reduces focus, increases emotional reactivity, and weakens self-control. No system can compensate for chronic exhaustion. Nutrition matters for the same reason. Blood sugar instability affects mood and decision-making. Discipline becomes harder when the body is underfueled or overstimulated. Movement is another overlooked source of energy. Regular physical activity improves mental clarity and emotional regulation. It is not about intensity, it is about circulation. Focus also requires breaks. Sustained attention without recovery leads to diminishing returns. Short pauses restore clarity and prevent burnout. Abundance grows when energy is protected. When you stop demanding output without recovery, when discipline includes rest as part of the system. This is not indulgence, it is strategy. High energy days should be used for creation and challenge. Low energy days should protect minimum standards and recovery. Both are part of the process. When energy is stable, discipline becomes calm. You stop forcing yourself. You stop swinging between extremes. Guard your energy, and time will obey. Chapter 16. Discipline that deepens relationships. Abundance is often discussed in terms of money, achievement, or personal freedom. But without healthy relationships, none of those things feel complete. True abundance includes emotional stability, trust, and respect in how you connect with others. Relationships do not fail because of lack of love. They fail because of lack of discipline. Emotional reactions, unchecked impulses, and unspoken boundaries slowly erode connection. In moments of tension, the undisciplined self seeks relief. It raises its voice, withdraws, deflects, or reacts defensively. These reactions feel justified in the moment, but they leave lasting damage. Discipline in relationships is the ability to pause when emotion is loud and choose restraint over release. This does not mean suppressing feelings. It means managing expression. Speaking with intention instead of impulse. Listening to understand instead of preparing to respond. Boundaries are a form of discipline. They protect energy, time, and emotional health. Without boundaries, resentment builds. With them, respect grows. Many people avoid boundaries because they fear conflict, but unspoken expectations create far more conflict over time than honest limits ever will. Discipline also shows up as patience, letting others be human, allowing imperfection without immediate judgment, choosing long-term harmony over short-term emotional discharge. In heated moments, discipline looks like slowing down, lowering volume, choosing words carefully, walking away when clarity is gone. This restraint is not weakness, it is strength under control. Abundance in relationships is built through consistency, showing up when promised, following through on commitments, being reliable emotionally, not just physically. Trust is not built through grand gestures, it is built through repeated evidence of self-control. When you control yourself, you create safety for others. When others feel safe, connection deepens. Control yourself, and you honor others. Chapter 17. Turning pain into purposed abundance. Pain is unavoidable. It arrives through loss, failure, rejection, disappointment, and unmet expectations. No disciplined life escapes it. But not all pain is wasted. Some pain becomes a teacher. Some pain becomes fuel. The difference lies in how it is handled. Most people try to escape pain as quickly as possible. They distract themselves, numb it, or bury it under comfort. This is understandable, but it comes at a cost. Unprocessed pain does not disappear. It settles into behavior, shaping decisions unconsciously. Abundance requires a different approach, one that does not glorify suffering, but does not waste it either. Pain carries information. It reveals what matters. It exposes fragile systems. It highlights misalignment. When approached with discipline, pain becomes clarifying instead of crippling. There are people who allow pain to harden them into bitterness. And there are people who allow pain to sharpen them into purpose. The difference is not strength. It is meaning. When pain is framed as punishment, it weakens resolve. When pain is framed as training, it builds capacity. Discipline allows you to stay present with discomfort long enough to extract value from it. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the disciplined mind asks, "What is this preparing me for?" This shift changes everything. Pain often strips away illusion. It removes false confidence. It exposes dependency on comfort. In doing so, it creates space for something more grounded to emerge. Many people discover their deepest purpose not during success, but during breakdown. When old identities collapse, new ones can be built intentionally. This does not mean seeking pain. It means not wasting it when it arrives. Channeling pain into growth requires structure, reflection instead of rumination, action instead of paralysis, expression instead of suppression. Pain that is disciplined becomes direction. It sharpens focus. It clarifies values. It strengthens boundaries. Over time, what once hurt becomes a source of quiet strength. Not because it disappeared, but because it was integrated. Pain discipline becomes power refined. Chapter 18. Playing the long game of abundance. Most people live as if life is a series of short sprints. They want results quickly, progress visibly, and rewards immediately. When those things do not arrive, motivation fades and effort collapses. This short-term mindset is one of the greatest barriers to abundance. Abundance is not built in days or weeks. It is built in years of steady, often uncelebrated consistency. The long game requires patience, and patience is a form of discipline. It is the ability to continue investing effort when feedback is minimal and rewards are distant. This is uncomfortable for the mind, which is wired to seek immediate gratification. The famous lesson of delayed gratification shows this clearly. Those who can wait, who can tolerate the discomfort of delay, consistently outperform those who chase immediate pleasure. Not because they are smarter, but because they are willing to sacrifice now for stability later. Abundance favors those who think in decades, not days. Careers are not built by bursts of effort followed by retreat. Health is not created by occasional intensity. Financial stability is not formed through luck or shortcuts. These outcomes are the result of compounding decisions repeated over time. The long game changes how you react to setbacks. Temporary losses no longer feel catastrophic. They are seen as part of a larger arc. This perspective protects emotional balance and prevents impulsive decisions. When you commit to the long game, urgency loosens its grip. You stop rushing. You stop comparing your timeline to others. You focus on pace instead of speed. This creates calm discipline. Delayed gratification does not mean denying joy. It means choosing deeper satisfaction over fleeting comfort. It means prioritizing outcomes that last over pleasures that fade. People who master the long game become unshakable. They are not easily distracted or discouraged. They know that consistency, applied patiently, always wins. Discipline is the courage to be consistent when no reward is near. Chapter 19. The freedom that comes from structure. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, as limitation, as a life stripped of spontaneity and joy. But this belief comes from looking at discipline from the outside, not from living inside it. In reality, the absence of discipline creates chaos, and chaos is far more limiting than structure. When life is unstructured, decisions pile up. Unfinished tasks linger in the mind. Guilt replaces clarity. You are constantly reacting, constantly adjusting, constantly trying to regain control. This is not freedom. This is mental noise. True freedom comes from knowing what must be done and doing it without debate. Structure removes confusion. It replaces anxiety with predictability. When your days have shape, your mind can rest. When priorities are clear, energy stops leaking into indecision. Artists, athletes, soldiers, and monks all understand this paradox. They operate within strict structures not to limit themselves, but to access deeper freedom. The artist uses form to express creativity. The athlete uses training to unlock performance. The monk uses rules to find peace. Discipline creates space. Space to think clearly. Space to choose intentionally. Space to enjoy life without the weight of avoidance. When you know your responsibilities are handled, relaxation becomes real. Pleasure is no longer shadowed by guilt. Rest becomes restorative instead of escapist. Abundance thrives in this environment. When life is orderly, opportunities are easier to recognize and act on. When energy is not drained by chaos, it can be invested deliberately. Discipline also protects you from your worst impulses, not by suppressing them, but by outgrowing them. Over time, the desire for distraction weakens as the satisfaction of order strengthens. This is the ultimate paradox. What once felt restrictive becomes liberating. What once required effort becomes natural. The disciplined are the truly free. Chapter 20. Stepping into command of your life. There comes a moment when discipline stops feeling like something you practice and starts feeling like something you embody. This is the shift from effort to leadership, from following instructions to issuing them. At this stage, abundance is no longer something you chase. It is something you manage. Becoming your own commander means trusting yourself. Trust built not on emotion or intention, but on evidence. Evidence that you do what you say you will do. Evidence that you act even when conditions are imperfect. This trust changes how you move through life. Decisions become cleaner. Excuses lose their power. You stop negotiating with distractions. Living by principles instead of emotions creates stability. Emotions fluctuate. Principles endure. When principles guide action, behavior remains steady regardless of internal noise. Visualization can make this shift tangible. Imagine yourself not as someone reacting to circumstances, but as someone directing them. You plan deliberately. You allocate energy wisely. You respond calmly. You correct course without self-attack. This is self-command. Self-command is not rigid, it is adaptable. When something fails, you adjust the strategy, not the standard. You remain aligned even when tactics change. At this level, discipline feels like self-respect in motion. You protect your time, you honor your commitments, you move with quiet confidence. Abundance flows toward those who can hold responsibility without resentment, who can manage freedom without chaos. You are no longer waiting to be saved by motivation. You are no longer chasing emotional highs. You are grounded, structured, and reliable. Discipline is self-love in armor. Outro. The law you were always living by. You began this audiobook surrounded by noise, advice, motivation, promises of quick change. And now, after walking through discipline, structure, and self-command, something should feel different. Quieter. Clearer. You have seen that abundance was never hidden in secrets, luck, or intensity. It was always built into the way life responds to repetition, to standards, to systems that do not depend on mood. Motivation fades. Feelings fluctuate. Circumstances change. But systems stay. Abundance grows when actions are consistent, when energy is protected, when time is respected, when emotions are felt but not obeyed, when comfort is challenged, when pain is refined into purpose, when the long game is honored. This is not punishment. This is peace. Discipline is not about denying yourself life. It is about removing chaos so life can be fully lived. It is about waking up without guilt, resting without anxiety, and moving forward without hesitation. You now understand that freedom is not found in doing whatever you want. It is found in doing what aligns you with who you want to become. If this audiobook gave you clarity, strength, or direction, continue this journey by subscribing to Prestige Audiobooks for daily mindset audiobooks designed to sharpen focus and build inner stability. Share this audiobook with someone who is still waiting for motivation to change their life. Remember this law because you are living by it, whether you are aware of it or not. Discipline is not about punishment. It is about peace. The secret law of abundance was never hidden. It was waiting for consistency.